What if I told you that Yahweh wasn't always the one and only God people worshipped? That question alone can challenge everything you thought you knew about the Bible and the origins of faith. Ancient texts, some long forgotten or overlooked, hint at a much more complex story. Before Yahweh stood alone as the supreme deity, there may have been a divine conflict, a cosmic showdown with other gods. According to these ancient records, the God of the Bible had to overcome competing gods to claim his ultimate authority. Back then, the spiritual realm wasn't ruled by a single power, but was home to multiple divine beings, each commanding their own realms, forces, and followers. This isn't just speculation. Archaeological findings, non-canonical writings, and even certain biblical passages provide intriguing clues. Take Deuteronomy 32, which mentions sons of God governing different peoples, or Psalm 82, where God presides over a council of divine beings and judges them. Who were these figures? Lesser gods, fallen angels, or rival spiritual powers? The Bible as we have it today is the product of centuries of editing and reshaping. It's quite possible that the version we know conceals a dramatic spiritual saga. Imagine a time when monotheism wasn't yet established and the heavens resembled a battlefield. Yahweh stood opposed to Canaanite gods like Baal, El, and Asherah, all jostling for influence and supremacy. This unseen war could have been about territory, belief, and who deserved ultimate worship. In the end, Yahweh emerged as the victor, becoming the one God to be worshipped. Or maybe the stories were molded over time to support a singular faith, wiping away the evidence of a far richer spiritual history. Some ancient relics even mention Yahweh alongside deities like Tiura, sparking questions that archaeologists are still trying to answer. It's likely that Israel's early religion was very different from what we imagine, formed in a time before the scriptures were finalized. Worship of Yahweh gradually excluded all others, consolidating into the strict monotheism we recognize today. But what sparked this change? Was it the reflection of real conflicts, both cultural and spiritual, or an ideological effort to eliminate competing beliefs? This story is tightly connected to the rise of monotheism itself. Scholars agree that the idea of a single God didn't just appear suddenly. It evolved over centuries amid clashes, cultural blending, and theological debates. Hidden between the lines of Scripture is a story of spiritual rivalry. Look at Isaiah 45, where God proclaims, "I am the Lord, and there is no other." This isn't just a statement of faith. It can be read as the triumphant declaration of a God who has defeated all others. But this ancient battle still resonates today. How does this hidden history affect our understanding of God? When we approach the Bible with fresh eyes, we uncover a deeper narrative, a tale of divine battles, power struggles, and the pursuit of spiritual dominance. What you're about to learn could transform how you see faith, history, and your personal relationship with the divine. Few people are aware of these secrets. You're stepping into a world of mysteries and revelations. Don't rush to conclusions. Each clue we explore could change your view of Yahweh and how he came to be the one true God. I want to hear what you think. Do you believe Yahweh was always the sole deity, or is there more to this story? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your voice could spark an eye-opening conversation for everyone. If this makes you think, please hit like to show support and help bring these discoveries to a wider audience. Subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the upcoming videos. We have many more biblical secrets to uncover together. Let's keep going. Next, we'll dive into how multiple gods competed for worship and power. Every culture had their own gods, myths, and stories about creation, cosmic battles, and humanity's destiny. Among the Canaanites, Baal was the storm god and warrior, while El was the supreme father of gods. The Sumerians revered gods like Anu, Enlil, and Enki, each with distinct roles over heaven, earth, and water. In Egypt, gods like Ra, Isis, and Osiris formed a rich spiritual tapestry that shaped life and death beliefs. Seeing all this, it's clear the Israelite faith emerged within a diverse religious landscape. Historical evidence suggests Yahweh started as a regional deity worshipped by a particular group, coexisting with other gods venerated by neighboring peoples. Over time, especially during times of crisis and cultural shifts, belief in Yahweh gained ground. But did this rise happen peacefully, or was there a real spiritual battle, where Yahweh had to prove himself against rivals? Ancient texts like Exodus 15:11 ask, "Who among the gods is like you, Lord?" showing that other gods were acknowledged, even if viewed as inferior. This doesn't mean monotheism wasn't around, but its rise as an unshakable, exclusive belief took time, shaped by debate, cultural clashes, and possibly spiritual battles. Picture the Israelites living for generations surrounded by mighty civilizations like Egypt and Babylon, each with their own rich myths and religious customs. Their constant interaction with these powerful neighbors influenced how they understood the divine. It's almost like the God of Israel had to assert his supremacy over the gods worshipped by other peoples. Stories like Yahweh's victories over Egyptian gods during the plagues in Exodus can be seen as symbolic echoes of this cosmic struggle, a way to show he was the one true God. Archaeological digs have uncovered inscriptions mentioning Yahweh alongside a figure named Asherah, challenging the strict monotheistic picture we often assume. This suggests that early worship of Yahweh wasn't as absolute or exclusive as later traditions would have us believe, but evolved gradually into the monotheism we recognize today. This evolution is fascinating because it raises important questions. Was belief in one God a sudden, divine revelation, or the result of long theological debates, cultural rivalries, and political power plays? Here, history and faith are deeply intertwined. Early Israelite tribes were far from united. Each had their own worship styles, often mixing in local pagan beliefs. Prophets like Elijah played a key role in challenging competing cults, such as those devoted to Baal. Remember the dramatic showdown on Mount Carmel, when Elijah confronted Baal's prophets? That event wasn't just a miracle. It was a bold spiritual and political statement declaring Yahweh as the only true God. This story underscores the idea of a divine conflict, a battle played out not only in the heavens but also in daily life. And we have to keep in mind that the biblical texts we read were shaped over centuries, written and edited across many cultural contexts. The form of Hebrew monotheism familiar to us today took shape especially after the Babylonian exile, when the Israelites were forced to reconsider their identity and faith. That period acted like a forge, and it's likely the emphasis on Yahweh's sole rule was strengthened to unify the people around one God. Why does all this matter now? Because understanding this history doesn't weaken belief. Instead, it reveals how human experience and divine revelation are closely linked. It invites us to approach the Bible with open, inquisitive minds, ready to uncover truths beyond the traditional stories. Think about it. If Yahweh had to triumph over other gods to claim sovereignty, what does that say about the ongoing struggle between light and darkness, truth and deception? This isn't just an ancient tale. It's a living metaphor for how the divine calls each of us to choose whom we will worship in the sanctuary of our hearts. Reflect on this with me. If you followed this far, type mystery in the comments to show you're diving deep into these profound ideas. Such reflection can change not only how we read the Bible, but also how we understand our own faith and life's purpose. So, what's your take? Did this divine conflict really happen? Has Yahweh always been the only God, Or was there once a cosmic rivalry before his ultimate victory? Share your thoughts. I want to hear from you. Ready for the next revelation? We'll explore texts that offer clear evidence of this spiritual battle and Yahweh's rise to supremacy. When we talk about Yahweh, we quickly realize his origins are shrouded in mystery, sparking ongoing debates among scholars, archaeologists, and theologians. Who was Yahweh at first? Was he always the singular, supreme God, or just one deity among many, competing for worship alongside other powerful gods? These provocative questions push us to reconsider the history of faith, revealing layers of knowledge often hidden beneath Scripture's surface. The name Yahweh first appears in very ancient records, and evidence points to his worship beginning as a regional practice, especially among desert tribes. Some sources suggest Yahweh was initially worshipped as a warrior god of storms, thunder, and battle, a protector of Israel, before being recognized as the creator of everything. Archaeological finds back this up. The inscriptions at Kuntalet Ajrud, dating around 800 BCE, mention Yahweh and his Asherah, a discovery that raises many questions. Who was Asherah? Some scholars believe she was a consort or female counterpart to Yahweh, a concept very different from later monotheistic views. This find challenges the notion that early Yahweh worship was pure or isolated. It reshapes how we see monotheism's development. Imagine the surprise of experts realizing that the story we inherited was shaped and even sanitized to promote the idea of one absolute God. Looking at neighboring cultures like the Canaanites, we find a rich polytheistic world. Baal, a god of fertility and rain, was a dominant figure. Yahweh would have had to carve out his unique identity among these gods, slowly asserting his supremacy. This wasn't just a physical contest, but a spiritual rivalry, with each nation believing its gods were supreme. These struggles, told in various ways, influence the concept of the single sovereign God we recognize today. Ancient texts like Psalm 82 reveal references to a divine council where God addresses and judges other divine beings. This leads us to wonder, are these gods just symbolic literary devices? Or is there a deeper meaning in these passages? Another intriguing point is the name Elohim, which appears throughout the Old Testament. Though translated as God, Elohim is plural in Hebrew, stirring even more curiosity. Why would the singular God use a name that literally means gods? Some scholars interpret it as a majestic plural, a form that emphasizes greatness. Others see it as a leftover echo from a time when Yahweh's worship existed alongside other deities. It's like hearing faint traces of an ancient spiritual reality before it solidified into strict monotheism. Think about how this changes the way we see faith. If Yahweh rose from a crowd of gods, his journey to become the one and only God is a story of power, revelation, and ultimate triumph. This transformation, from one deity among many to the singular God of the Bible, adds a new layer of meaning to monotheism. To really understand this, we have to dive into the historical, archaeological, and spiritual background of the time. Many scholars argue that Hebrew monotheism wasn't born fully formed. Instead, it was shaped slowly over time, through crises, wars, and profound spiritual experiences that convinced people Yahweh alone could guide and save them. Take the Exodus from Egypt, for example. The plagues weren't just punishments. They symbolized Yahweh's challenge to the Egyptian gods. Each plague humiliated a particular deity, proving the God of Israel's superiority. These stories strengthened the people's faith and established Yahweh's place as the one true God. As time went on, memories of other gods faded, but hints of these struggles still peek through the Bible's text. When it says, "You shall have no other gods before me," Exodus 23. It's more than a command. It's a reminder that people once worshipped many gods. It's a call for exclusive devotion to Yahweh, reflecting a spiritual and cultural battle that echoes through history and continues to challenge us today. Imagine uncovering all these layers. The God you worship now is the product of an intense, turbulent history filled with conflict and revelation. This doesn't weaken faith, it deepens it. A God who triumphs over every rival not only shows immense strength, but reveals an unbreakable love for his people. That's why this ancient story still feels so relevant today. Have you ever come across the idea that Yahweh might once have been part of a larger pantheon? This concept reshapes how you read the Bible. If you're curious, type in the comments, "I want to know more about the War of the Gods because I want to see who is truly curious to dive into this topic." In our next conversation, we'll uncover even more fascinating truths. How Yahweh confronted and defeated his divine rivals to become the one true God. Trust me, what comes next will deepen your fascination with the Bible's hidden stories. Ready to keep going? When we explore the War of the Gods, we're stepping into a part of the biblical narrative many prefer to ignore. Yet it's woven throughout the scriptures. The Bible mentions other gods multiple times. For those who believe there's always been only one God, this can be surprising. But the texts reveal a much more complex spiritual battlefield. Consider Psalm 82. It shows a dramatic scene where God stands in a divine assembly, judging other gods. Who are these gods? Are they just idols? Or could they represent real spiritual beings? Picture Yahweh, the God of Israel, standing before the heavenly council as the supreme judge, asserting his authority over other powerful beings. It feels like a spiritual war, a fight for ultimate sovereignty. This theme shows up elsewhere too. In Exodus 12:12, God says he will execute judgment on all Egyptian gods. Each plague was not just a miracle, but a spiritual defeat of their deities. Yahweh declaring, "I am greater than all of you." These stories hint that the Bible portrays a series of confrontations, both earthly and spiritual. The War of the Gods also appears in stories about fallen angels and rebellious spiritual forces. Isaiah 14 describes the morning star, often linked to Lucifer, who tried to elevate himself above God's heavenly beings. This fall is more than a metaphor for pride. It may represent a real cosmic battle. Similarly, Ezekiel 28 describes the king of Tyre in terms suggesting he was connected to powerful spiritual beings who fell from grace. Together, these accounts show a clear pattern. Yahweh repeatedly proves his supremacy over other challengers. When the Israelites entered Canaan, they weren't just taking land. They were confronting local gods like Baal and Ashtoreth. The Bible records how people were tempted by these cults, and how prophets and leaders reaffirmed that only Yahweh deserves worship. The famous contest on Mount Carmel, where Elijah challenges Baal's prophets, is a vivid example. Elijah calls on Yahweh to send fire from heaven, and when he does, it proves decisively who the true God is. Scholars have many theories about these celestial battles. Some say the mentions of other gods reflect historical struggles where Yahweh was elevated above all others to unite the faith. Others see these gods as powerful angels or spiritual beings who rebelled and were defeated. A theme echoed in Revelation 12, where Michael and his angels fight the dragon and its forces. The image of a celestial war is powerful because it points to a spiritual battle happening beyond what we can see. Picture this, an unseen realm where divine forces clash for control, with Yahweh rising as the supreme commander, securing ultimate victory. This isn't just an intriguing story. It's a reminder that faith isn't only about belief, but about recognizing a daily struggle for our souls, attention, and loyalty. This idea of a war of the gods also appears in how the Bible talks about pagan nations. When Israel worshipped other gods, the prophets saw it not just as sin, but as siding with hostile spiritual enemies. Passages like Deuteronomy 6:14 warn, "Do not follow other gods, gods of the peoples around you." It draws a clear line. Yahweh on one side, true God, false gods on the other, tempting people away. But were these other gods mere myths, or real spiritual beings who had to be defeated before Yahweh's truth could prevail? That question pushes us deeper into understanding the spiritual world. Take Psalm 95:3. "The Lord is the great God, the great King above all gods." Why would such affirmations be necessary if no other gods had ever challenged Yahweh's place? This leads us to another important reflection: how the ancient spiritual war connects to challenges we face today. If divine powers once battled for supremacy, that struggle is still ongoing. Today, false idols like wealth, status, vanity, and pleasure can distract us just as much as those ancient gods did. The Bible may be warning us all along that this battle never ends, and we must choose whom to serve. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about this idea of a spiritual war in the Bible? Are those other gods simply symbols, or is there something more real behind the words? If you believe in a spiritual battle, type, "I believe in the spiritual battle," in the comments. Opening this discussion helps us all gain a clearer view of the spiritual reality surrounding us. Are you ready to go further? Next, we'll explore how Yahweh emerged from this conflict, not just in words, but through powerful signs and acts that changed history. Do you want to continue this journey with me? Looking at Yahweh's rise through history, we see a long and intense process. He started as the tribal god of the Hebrew people, a warrior protecting his people against foreign gods and forces. Over time, his identity expanded beyond tribal limits to become the creator of all, the sovereign Lord above every other deity. This transformation is closely tied to Israel's collective experience. In moments of hardship, like slavery in Egypt or exile in Babylon, people wrestled with the question, if Yahweh is supreme, why allow suffering? It was during these times that prophets like Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Elijah stepped forward with powerful messages, warnings, and revelations. They preached Yahweh's dominance over all gods and condemned idolatry, urging people to reject foreign gods and pagan practices. These prophets constantly reminded Israel that Yahweh wasn't just another god, but the only one worthy of worship and obedience. In fact, they often confronted the gods of other nations head-on. Elijah's dramatic challenge to Baal's prophets on Mount Carmel is a perfect example. He called on Yahweh to send fire from heaven, and when he did, it proved who truly ruled over earth and sky. This event was more than a miracle. It was a symbolic turning point in Yahweh's rise over all other spiritual powers. The prophets became champions of this spiritual revolution, lifting the banner of monotheism and calling Israel to abandon false gods. But Yahweh's ascendancy wasn't just spiritual. It was also cultural and national. The Israelites needed to stand apart from their polytheistic neighbors, forging a unique identity rooted in the belief in one true God. This identity became even stronger during the Babylonian exile, when the Israelites found themselves surrounded by idol worship. It was then that many biblical texts were compiled and edited to strengthen their faith and unity in Yahweh. Prophets like Ezekiel and Daniel played crucial roles in nurturing hope, reminding the people that even in oppression, their God would reign supreme over all nations. As their faith grew, the language used to describe Yahweh also evolved, reflecting his expanding role as the universal God. Yahweh was no longer just a warrior god or a protector of desert tribes. He became the creator of the heavens and the sovereign ruler over the entire universe. Passages like Isaiah 45:5 make this crystal clear. I am the Lord, and there is no other. Apart from me, there is no God. This wasn't just a claim of power. It was a profound revelation that resonated deeply with the people. It was as if Yahweh declared, I am everything you need. No other God can even come close. This dramatic shift reshaped how faith was practiced, moving away from honoring multiple gods toward worship centered solely on Yahweh. It's remarkable how, over time, monotheism became a defining identity for the Hebrew people, setting them apart from all other nations. But this transformation didn't come without sacrifice. Prophets risked their lives to spread this truth, standing up to kings, corrupt priests, and crowds drawn to pagan cults. Jeremiah endured persecution and mockery for speaking out. Isaiah's visions were so powerful that they continue to inspire awe centuries later. These prophets were the instruments through which Yahweh revealed himself not just as a tribal deity, but as the Lord over all creation. Picture this: a people surrounded by cultures worshiping dozens of gods, each with grand temples, statues, and rituals. Amid all that noise, one voice rose up, proclaiming there was only one true God, invisible but infinitely greater than any idol carved from stone or wood. This message was revolutionary, dangerous even, because it challenged everything the surrounding nations believed. Yet it was precisely this bold declaration that changed the course of history. Yahweh didn't need a pantheon of gods to prove his power. He revealed himself through signs, miracles, and an undeniable spiritual presence. Now, I want to know, when you think about Yahweh's rise as the one true God, what emotions does that stir in you? If this story of triumph over false gods strengthens your faith, type Yahweh is unique in the comments. I want to see who truly connects with this message and understands that we're talking not just about ancient history, but a living spiritual reality that still matters today. And there's so much more to uncover. Next, we'll explore the evidence, the signs, and the proofs that reveal how Yahweh's ascent was built and secured over time. Truths that could change how you see the Bible and your own faith journey. Are you ready to dive deeper? When we explore archaeological discoveries, we realize that the Bible interacts with a rich and complex historical world, far beyond its pages. Excavations in the ancient Near East have uncovered artifacts, inscriptions, and symbols that help piece together the context of Yahweh's worship. Among the most intriguing finds are inscriptions mentioning Yahweh and Shuwala, dating to around 800 BCE, discovered at sites like Kuntilet Ajrud and Khirbet el-Qom. These references challenge long-held views about Hebrew monotheism, suggesting that in earlier times, Yahweh may have been worshipped alongside a female figure, possibly his consort or a goddess linked to fertility and protection. The mention of Asherah disrupts traditional narratives but cannot be ignored. In Canaanite religion, Asherah was revered as the queen of heaven, a mother goddess associated with life and abundance. The Bible condemns worship involving Asherah's sacred poles, indicating that at some point, the Israelites incorporated or flirted with these pagan elements. This points to a long and complex path toward exclusive monotheism, marked by internal struggles and efforts to purify the faith. When prophets condemned idolatry, they weren't just fighting foreign gods, but also the blending of Yahweh worship with other religious practices. The myths from Ugarit, uncovered on clay tablets near modern-day Syria, shed light on this world. These stories feature gods like Baal and El, who battle cosmic forces and govern nature and nations. You can see clear parallels in biblical poetry describing Yahweh as a warrior who commands storms, thunder, and lightning. This shared imagery wasn't accidental. It showed that Yahweh was no lesser than these foreign gods. More than that, he was the supreme Lord over all creation's forces. Back then, religion was woven into every part of life: farming, harvest, war, health, and marriage. Every nation believed their gods controlled their survival and success. In that environment, proclaiming Yahweh as the only true God was daring, almost revolutionary. The fact that early Israelite inscriptions mention Yahweh alongside Asherah suggests a transitional period when the people were still negotiating their divine identity before fully committing to monotheism. This highlights how Hebrew faith evolved through purification and constant reaffirmation of Yahweh's sovereignty. Archaeology simultaneously confirms and complicates traditional views of the Bible. For example, some fragments bear regional titles like Yahweh of Samaria or Yahweh of Teman, indicating that his worship might have started as a local phenomenon before becoming universal as the God of all creation. That gradual transformation from a tribal deity to the one supreme God is what makes this story so compelling. It shows faith didn't develop overnight, but through cultural shifts, spiritual battles, and historical challenges. When we look closely at Ugaritic myths alongside Hebrew scripture, an intriguing connection emerges. Baal is depicted as the god who battles the sea god Yam, conquering chaos itself, while in the Bible, Yahweh is described as the one who commands the sea and controls the waters. These aren't just poetic similarities. They reflect a shared cultural background where Yahweh rose as far more powerful than any other deity. Take Psalm 29, for instance, which celebrates the voice of Yahweh, shattering the waters, signaling that the true master of storms was not Baal, but the God of Israel. If you pause to reflect, these parallels don't weaken faith. Instead, they deepen our understanding of how divine history unfolded in a world filled with competing gods and beliefs. Yahweh didn't merely claim uniqueness. He demonstrated it within a society accustomed to many gods. The Bible is not just a book of devotion. It's a chronicle of cultural and spiritual conflict. Every passage, prophecy, and story declares Yahweh's victory, not only over idols carved from stone, but over the very ideas that ruled people's minds in those ancient times. Now, I want you to consider this. What do you think about these archaeological findings? Have you heard about inscriptions mentioning Yahweh alongside Asherah? Does this shift your perspective on the history of faith? If you're eager to explore more, type, "I want to uncover the secrets of biblical archaeology" in the comments. Your engagement helps signal YouTube to bring more content like this and motivates me to dig deeper into the hidden layers of history and faith. Ready to go further? Next, we'll venture into a less charted territory of biblical history, almost forbidden territory. We'll discuss theories about why certain knowledge was suppressed or forgotten, and how this relates to the spiritual battles and Yahweh's rise to sovereignty. Are you prepared to hear things few dare to speak openly? There's a side of Yahweh's story that traditional theology often avoids, carefully silenced to maintain one official narrative. When we talk about monotheism, it's easy to assume it has always been clear and uncontested. Yet historical and textual evidence points to a complex, often turbulent transition marked by disputes, edits, and the exclusion of some texts that challenged mainstream interpretations. Take the apocryphal books, for example. These texts provide powerful insights into stories about God, angels, and ancient events that didn't make it into the Bible we know today. Why were they left out? Did they reveal truths that might shake the foundation of faith or expose forbidden aspects of divinity? Closer examination shows these writings weren't discarded due to lack of spiritual value. Many were excluded because they touched on controversial subjects, offering details about biblical figures or the spiritual realm that clashed with dominant theology. One striking example is the Book of Enoch, which presents vivid accounts of fallen angels corrupting humanity and hints at a fierce spiritual war predating even Genesis. Traditional theology largely sidelined such texts, fearing they raised more questions than answers, exposing a vision of Yahweh in constant battle with rebellious spiritual forces. Beyond Enoch, writings like the Book of Jubilees, the Gospel of Thomas, and the Book of Wisdom explore spiritual dimensions and heavenly secrets, truths hidden for centuries. Some even portray the Hebrew people's struggle to maintain faith in Yahweh amid widespread paganism. This doesn't mean these texts are false or irrelevant. On the contrary, they offer a window into the formation of faith over centuries. Have you ever considered that the Bible we have today is the result of a careful selection process, guided not only by spiritual aims but also by political and social motives? To establish one true God, anything that could cause doubt or present conflicting views had to be removed. This is where the hidden history emerges. Texts mentioning other gods, divine consorts like Asherah, alternative creation stories, or teachings threatening religious authority were excluded or labeled heretical. It's astonishing how this cleansing shaped millions of believers' understanding of God. This doesn't mean the Bible lost its divine essence, but it reminds us there are layers of history beneath the surface. Knowing this helps us appreciate Yahweh's greatness even more, understanding that His story includes battles not only among gods, but between competing narratives of truth. It makes you wonder about the power of knowledge. Why was this kept from open discussion? Were these writings too dangerous because they reveal a more complex spiritual reality? The apocryphal texts also shed light on biblical characters, revealing fuller stories about Jesus' childhood, Moses' life, and angelic beings who barely appear in canonical scripture. It's as if the official Bible is just the tip of the iceberg, with a vast treasure trove of stories and insights still waiting beneath. That's exactly why exploring these ancient texts is both captivating and complex. It's impossible not to wonder how our faith might look if we had access to all these writings from the very beginning. Modern discoveries, like the Dead Sea Scrolls found at Qumran, have unveiled dozens of ancient manuscripts. Some support traditional beliefs, while others challenge them, revealing a diversity of thought even among the Hebrew people themselves. Not everyone saw their relationship with Yahweh the same way. Some texts describe cosmic battles, hidden mysteries, and rituals that might seem strange or even unacceptable today. This reminds us that faith throughout history has been a living, evolving experience, often marked by internal struggles. Think about it. How often do you hear sermons or studies openly discussing apocryphal books? Rarely, right? And that's exactly why we're here, to bring those hidden stories into the light and broaden our understanding. This isn't about doubting faith. It's about expanding our grasp of what lies behind the biblical text. If Yahweh's story involves divine wars, fallen angels, and the defeat of rival gods, why shy away from facing that reality? I want to hear from you. Have you ever read or heard about any apocryphal books? What do you think about the fact that many texts were excluded from the Bible? If you're curious, comment below with, "I want to discover hidden books." That way, I'll know you're ready to explore this lesser-known side of history. Next, we'll dive deeper, looking at these hidden truths from spiritual and philosophical perspectives and how they connect to our lives and faith today. Are you ready to continue this journey? When we see this ancient war among gods not as a distant story, but as a living metaphor, we begin to understand its powerful influence on our spirituality and how we view faith. Yahweh's struggle to assert himself over other deities isn't just a historical episode. It symbolizes a timeless conflict between truth and illusion, light and darkness. This battle at the birth of monotheism still reflects in the choices we make, the beliefs we hold, and what rules our hearts. Every time we decide who or what governs our lives, we replay that same ancient conflict, Yahweh versus other gods. Whether those gods are idols carved from stone, or modern obsessions like money, status, or power. Monotheism, though it feels natural to us now, was revolutionary when it first appeared. Imagine living in a world where every nation worshipped dozens of gods. Gods of fertility, rain, war, and the afterlife. Then suddenly, a new message arises. There is only one true God, and He reigns over all. This transformed not only religion but reshaped how people understood society, life, and meaning itself. This belief in one God brought a new order, a foundation for unity and justice that has profoundly influenced Western civilization. The pillars of law, morality, and human dignity all grew from the idea that one true God governs all, and that life has a purpose beyond chaos. But here's a question. Do we still grasp how profound this message really is? Today's world is full of new gods. They're not Baal, Ashtoreth, or Molech, but they're just as tempting, gods of wealth, power, vanity, pleasure, and endless approval-seeking. Every day, ideologies and distractions try to pull us away from the true God, placing other things on the throne of our hearts. The spiritual battle that began when Yahweh confronted false gods continues within us all. The crucial question is, who sits on the throne of your heart? If we pause and reflect, we see monotheism as more than a religious belief. It's a way of seeing life clearly and sincerely. It teaches that serving many masters fragments us. When the ancient Hebrews embraced Yahweh as the only God, they also embraced exclusive loyalty. No room for divided allegiance. That same call comes to us today. In a world flooded with noise, distractions, and empty promises, we're invited back to the foundational truth. There is one sovereign God who gives meaning to our journey. Another important effect of monotheism is how it shaped culture and society. It introduced the idea of universal morality, principles that stand above human whims, laws, or rulers. The belief in a divine law higher than all human law changed how justice, compassion, and community were understood. This influence remains deeply rooted in Western values today. Concepts like dignity, equality, and freedom find their roots in the vision of one Creator God who made all humans with purpose. Yet, over the centuries, this message has sometimes been diluted or forgotten. Modern life brings amazing progress, but also a weakening of true spirituality. For many, faith has become mere tradition or cultural habit. But when we return to Yahweh's story and the spiritual battles that led to His recognition as the one God, we remember faith is alive. It calls for daily choices. It's not just about believing. It's about living that belief, even when the world tries to pull us away. Take a moment now. What gods have you allowed space for in your life? What has taken the place that belongs only to the true God? This reflection gets to the heart of what this divine battle teaches us. Just as the Israelites faced the daily choice between worshiping Yahweh or foreign gods, we too must decide whether to follow truth or get lost in the illusions of the world. And here's the powerful truth. When we truly recognize Yahweh as the one and only God, beyond comparison, something inside us shifts. We find new strength, purpose, and clarity. Monotheism isn't just a set of beliefs, it's a way of life. It calls us to center our whole hearts on one Lord. This is the core of genuine spirituality, one that transforms us not through empty rituals, but through a real relationship with the Creator. I want to hear from you. What does it mean to you to acknowledge Yahweh as the only God in a world filled with distractions and competing gods? Drop the phrase, "I choose the true God," in the comments if you understand that this battle isn't just ancient history, but something real and personal today. In the next segment, we'll dive even deeper, exploring how this spiritual war connects with our daily choices and can radically change how we view our lives and faith. Are you ready to keep going? Does God need to destroy others to be unique? Or is that just how we humans understand power, dominance, and authority? That question invites us to reflect deeply. When we see Yahweh overcoming other gods, it might just reflect our human way of thinking, always seeing reality as a struggle or contest. But is that really God's nature? Or are we projecting our limited human ideas onto Him, as if He needed to fight for recognition? The truth is, Yahweh never needed rivalry to be God. He already is unique and supreme. The reason these stories exist is because people surrounded by many gods could only grasp divinity through the lens of competition. Just as nations fought over land, it was believed gods fought for territory and worship. Today, we live in a kind of ideological battle, no longer over statues or temples, but over ideas, beliefs, and values competing for our attention. Social media is a perfect example. Every day, we're hit with competing opinions and narratives, each claiming to be the absolute truth. Doesn't that sound a lot like the ancient choice between Yahweh and Baal or Ashtoreth? It was a struggle not only for spiritual loyalty, but for people's minds and hearts. Throughout biblical history, Yahweh has shown He isn't limited by human rivalry. He doesn't need to tear down others to be recognized because His greatness is inherent. But the stories were told in a way that people could understand. Miracles and victories over other gods made it clear. No power compares with Him. Yet the people of that time needed to hear it this way. They needed the image of an invincible warrior God to grasp His sovereignty. Even now, many of us think about faith as a battle between what we believe and what the world pushes on us. And in a sense, that's true. With so many philosophies and worldviews around, we must continually reaffirm whom we trust, what foundation we build our lives on. Yahweh calls us every day to make that choice. Will we follow the path of truth and light? Or will we fall for modern gods like power, wealth, vanity, or the endless chase for approval? Think about today's political disputes. Each side fights to claim the ultimate truth, dividing people with competing stories. But just like in faith, truth doesn't need to shout or fight to prove itself. It stands firm because it's real and consistent. Yahweh doesn't compete for space. He is the source of everything. The problem is our limited perspective, seeing divine acts as battles when really they reveal an eternal truth. That's why this reflection matters. Perhaps the greatest lesson from this divine war isn't destruction, but clarity. Yahweh didn't destroy other gods because He needed to be unique. He did it to show that no idol or human invention can offer true life, hope, or salvation. And that lesson applies today. How often do we put faith in things without real power? Ideologies, leaders, material things, expecting them to fill a void only God can satisfy. So here's my question for you. What other gods are competing with Yahweh in your life? Have you given more trust to worldly things than to God? Think about it deeply. This battle isn't just history, it's alive and personal. Just as Israel had to turn away from idols to follow Yahweh fully, we're called to make that same choice every day. If you're ready to stand firm, write in the comments, "Son Yahweh, the only God." Say this if you recognize that in a world full of competing voices, true strength comes from knowing who God really is. This is your public commitment, not to be swayed by false promises, but to follow the true God. Get ready, because next we'll take an even deeper step. seeing how these reflections apply directly to our daily lives, changing how we understand spirituality and face life's challenges. Are you ready to continue this journey with me? If you've stayed this far, thank you for sticking with me. Now it's your turn to get involved. Hit like to help others find these truths. Subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss what's next, because we have many more powerful revelations ahead. And if you're still here, comment, "I went to the end with Yahweh," to join a special group committed not just to watching, but truly diving into these discussions. Don't stop now. A new video is waiting on your screen, filled with fresh insights to keep you inspired. Click and keep moving forward with me.